What is the Torah? You might have heard the term before in high school history or from a friend. If you're Jewish, you might be used to hearing about it, maybe as the explanation for why we keep Passover and the other holy days, or maybe you've heard it used as a source of Jewish history. If you're Christian, maybe you've heard it described as the Old Testament, or part of the Old Testament, or just brushed aside as the Jewish Bible. So, what is the Torah? The Torah is a set of 5 ancient scrolls that have been meticulously preserved for thousands of years, because these scrolls contain the earliest self-understanding of the Jewish people. And more than that, it tells a story of how God lovingly uses this people to accomplish a cosmically sized mission. The Torah makes up the first section of the Jewish scriptures. We call these scriptures the Hebrew Bible, or the Tanakh. Tanakh is a helpful name because it's a Hebrew acronym that refers to the Hebrew Bible's 3 sections: Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Torah is a Hebrew word that carries a rich meaning. It's most often translated into English as law. Torah means more than just law, though. It means instruction and teaching. But these are not different definitions of the same word. This meaning is all wrapped together. So naming this collection of scrolls Torah tells us that this book is in some way instructive and supposed to teach something. Not to mention it contains a law code. When we read the Torah to see what it teaches, what we find is a story about Israel's place in God's mission. The vast majority of the text is about Israel and centers on them receiving a law code from God. But the story opens before the laws, before there's a nation of Israel, or for that matter, before there's anything at all, except the Creator. It begins with the Creator creating creation. God makes an ordered world that is full of life, and the crown jewel of his creation are the humans who he made in his image. And he gives his new image bearers the responsibility of ruling. But in the very beginning of the Torah, humans stop trusting God and listen to a created being instead. This decision has disastrous effects, and because of their wrongdoing, humans are separated from God. This separation and introduction of evil to the world becomes the main conflict that the story is about, in the Torah and beyond. It is in this context that the people of Israel are introduced. As the Torah continues, a man named Abraham and his descendants are introduced as the first step in God's plan to reconcile humans back to himself. God invites Abraham's descendants, known as Israel, into a special relationship with himself. The reason the Torah starts before Abraham and Israel is to introduce the problem that God uses Abraham, Israel, and the law to undo. In the beginning, humanity at large was separated from God. The Torah shows that the law and Israel's special relationship with God is part of how he uses Israel to reconcile humankind back to himself. So, according to the Torah, the people of Israel were not chosen just for their own sake, but they have a special place in God's plan to bring life to the whole world. After introducing the purpose of Israel's special place in his plan, the Torah zooms in on the people of Israel and focuses on the covenant agreement God made with them at Mount Sinai through a law code. When he gives them this law code, he tells them that once they go into the land he's giving them, he knows they're going to break the law. He doesn't allow them to. In fact, he warns them not to, but he tells them he knows they're going to do it anyway. But he also promises not to give up on them when they do. Then the Torah comes to an end after Israel had received the law code and finally made it to the Promised Land. But before they entered the land, God told them that during the life of the covenant, nobody could ever add to, take away, or change any of the law code. Then the Nevi'im and Ketuvim, or prophets and writing sections of the Hebrew Bible, continue the story. They don't add laws, they just continue the story. It picks up right where the Torah left off. But before moving on, the author highlighted the importance of the Torah. This is what it says about Joshua, the leader of Israel, as the Torah concludes. He read all of the words of the Torah, the blessing and the curse, according to everything that is written in the book of the Torah. There was not a word of all that Moses had commanded, which Joshua did not read before all the assembly of Israel. During the same time period that the Tanakh was written and finalized, there were other Jewish writings surfacing that the Jewish leaders considered very good and important. And by the 3rd century BC, the Jewish people could see that the world was becoming more and more Greek. So in an effort to preserve the Tanakh and their people's connection to the scriptures, they translated them from Hebrew to Greek for the first time. When they did this, they also translated some of those other writings. They still didn't consider them scripture, but now if you had this newly translated collection of works, you'd have the Tanakh, Torah, prophets, and writings, and these other works together in the same collection. This brings us to the Christian Old Testament. The Protestant Old Testament consists of the same scrolls that make up the Tanakh. They're in a slightly different order. But there has been debate among Christian groups for centuries on whether those other important Jewish works that were translated into Greek should be part of the Christian Bible. So you have some Christian groups who accept more than just the Tanakh. In the 3rd century AD, Jewish sages started to put into writing traditions about the Torah that had been passed down orally for generations, texts such as the Mishnah, the Talmud, and more. Until that time, these traditions had been taught orally and not written down. These oral traditions explain and expound on the Torah and on the laws in the Torah. All these traditions are known as the oral Torah. There has long been debate among Jewish people on whether the oral Torah was given to Moses on Mount Sinai or developed later on. Nevertheless, in Rabbinic Judaism today, the Tanakh is not the only holy text for the Jewish people. There is also all the content in what's called the oral Torah. So today, the Jewish holy books include the Torah, the rest of the Hebrew Bible, and all the texts of the oral Torah. Okay, so let's summarize what the Torah is. The Torah is the name for the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, or Christian Old Testament. The Torah is a story, and the authors believed the story was about how God was working through history. Part of that story was God giving a law code to one specific people group, Israel. His reason for giving Israel the law code was to make this nation his representatives to the rest of the world. But the story continues past the Torah with 2 more collections of scrolls, the prophets and the writings. Together, all 3 make the Tanakh, or Hebrew Bible, or Old Testament.